What's your name, miss? Miss
Adler.
Adler.
Sadie Adler. Mrs. He was my husband.
Now, that's what I call an introduction to a character. A character that we all know and we all love. A character that kind of felt like they could have easily been playable and no one would really complain. Most people in Red Dead Redemption 2 go through tragedy. That's kind of a requirement in this world. I mean, Dutch himself probably hands out trauma like he does false promises.
Have some goddamn faith!
But see, the story of this character itself is just different. It's raw, it's tragic, and most of all, it's personal. In a way, I would say that it's most similar to the story of little Jack Marston. Unlike Arthur, John, or even Dutch, this character didn't choose the life that she had. She wasn't born into it, nor did she have to be on the run from the law. She was just Sadie, a strong woman living a quiet life in the Grizzlies with her husband, Nakey Jakey.
What is this, the fucking History Channel?
Then, one random night, the O'Driscolls, dressed in terrible coats with ugly green bandanas, came knocking at the front door. And they didn't just rob the place. No, they took her entire world and set it on fire. Well, technically, Micah did, but that's besides the point that I'm trying to make. Even if they didn't physically set the place on fire themselves, what they did to her and her husband was way worse than any fire could ever do. From that moment on, something inside of Sadie snapped. She became something else, something hell-bent on getting back at the people that wronged her. We know that throughout the story, she goes from a grieving widow to one of the most feared bounty hunters in the Wild West. She was brutal, relentless, and if you crossed her, well, you'd better hope you had a damn good will written out. She wasn't just a character, some filler to add to the already big Vandalin gang. Now, she was, in a way, a myth. Someone who went from simple rancher wife to one of the most dangerous women in the Wild West. And in this video, we're gonna break down how she survived, evolved, and eventually outlived nearly everyone else from the Vandalin gang. Sadie Adler wasn't born a gunslinger. She wasn't some legendary outlaw running from the law. In fact, before the O'Driscolls came knocking, she lived a life most people in RDR2 could only dream of. She had a home, a husband she loved, and a quiet life far from all the chaos of men like Dutch and Colm O'Driscoll. Sometimes, during the late 1890s, Sadie and Jake Adler settled. Sometime during the late 1890s, Sadie and Jake Adler settled in Amberino, far away from the madness of civilization. The little ranch was simple, isolated, and most importantly, theirs. Now, let's be real for a second. Most Rockstar protagonists don't get a happily ever after. If you see a cozy looking cabin in a Rockstar game, it usually means one of the following two things. You're about to witness a horrific tragedy, or you're about to cause one yourself. And for Sadie, it was the first one. She and Jake had no beef with anyone, no enemies, no bounty on their heads, but that didn't matter. Because the O'Driscolls weren't looking for justice, they were looking for blood. When the O'Driscolls came, she had two choices: die right then and there, or live long enough to make them regret letting her breathe. And well, you already know which one she picked. She somehow managed to survive before the Vandalin gang managed to find her. Now, if this were anyone else, that would have been the end of their story. But for Sadie, that was just the beginning. She wasn't just a grieving widow. She wasn't just another victim. She was about to become something else entirely. A force of nature, a hunter, and a ghost that will hunt the very own existence of the O'Driscolls. And the O'Driscolls had no idea what they had just unleashed. When Sadie joined the Vandalin gang, the gang treated her like just another soul. Another person Dutch could scoop up with his "we are family and I have a plan" speech before leaving them for death in a ferry boat just outside Blackwater. At camp, she was quiet, distant, and probably on the verge of stabbing someone at any given moment. But unlike others who got pulled into Dutch's dream, Sadie wasn't interested in being part of some glorified traveling circus. She wasn't looking for money. She wasn't looking for freedom. She was looking for vengeance. And when she finally snapped, it was a beautiful sight to behold. Even Arthur, who, let's be honest, was already a walking Grim Reaper at this point, had to stop and go, "Damn lady, you be crazy." By the time Red Dead Redemption 2 reaches its final act, most of the Vandaland gang is either dead, captured, or running for their lives. But Sadie, she had already moved on. She knew not to get too attached to any of the fools in the gang. Only a select few people deserved her respect. By the time she really found her place, Sadie wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was carving out her own path, one blood-soaked step at a time. The thing is, Sadie had no reason to hold back. Unlike Arthur, who carried the weight of his past mistakes, or John, who was always trying to be something he wasn't, Sadie had already lost everything. She wasn't fighting to protect a dream. She wasn't fighting for some half-baked plan.
This is all going to
Hell.
Sadie was fighting because there was nothing else left. And when you have nothing to lose, you become unstoppable. At first, the gang thought Sadie was a liability, a widow fighting and taking on entire groups of outlaws on their own. But by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. Sadie wasn't just another gang member. She was the deadliest person in the entire gang. And she was only getting started. As the gang crumbled, Sadie watched them fall apart one by one. Arthur was dying, Dutch was losing his mind, and the gang was turning on each other faster than you can say we need more money.
We just need
Therapy.
So in the end, Sadie made one final choice. She would never be powerless again. And when she started writing with Marston after Arthur's death, it wasn't just about friendship. It wasn't just about honoring Arthur's memory either. It was about having a reason to keep going. And that's when she truly became a legendary bounty hunter. She didn't do it for justice. She didn't do it for the law either. She did it because it was the only thing that made sense. If she couldn't bring back what was taken from her, then she'd make sure no one ever got the chance to hurt her like that again. At this point, Sadie had no master. She never really answered to Dutch, she didn't answer to John or Arthur, and hell, she barely even answered to the law itself. She was her own force of nature, something worse than an outlaw, worse than an O'Driscoll, and worse than any bounty she ever hunted. She was pure, unfiltered revenge in human form. And by the time RDR1's story rolls around, she's a ghost. Some say she went to South America, some say she never stopped hunting folks, and some say that if you listen real close, you can still hear her spurs in the dust. Unfortunately, the reality is that Rockstar never thought about this character before RDR2, and that's the only reason we don't know much about her after the end of RDR2. But here's the thing, in a way, Sadie outgrew the game itself. She wasn't just another outlaw with a tragic backstory. She wasn't another member of Dutch's doomed gang. She was bigger than all of them. She was a force, a storm, and most importantly, a legend. A woman who lost everything, and instead of breaking, she turned herself into something unbreakable. At the end of the day, we don't know where she went after RDR2. We don't know what she did next. And that's precisely why she became something more. A myth that we as players can talk about and look back at fondly. And in the end, she wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. She wasn't fighting for Arthur, nor was she fighting for John. She was fighting because it was the only thing she knew how to do. And in the end, the world didn't kill her. The past didn't drag her down. She actually managed to escape. What exactly happened after will remain a mystery. But for all we know, she could be in Tahiti harvesting mangoes on that piece of land Dutch always wanted. And honestly, wouldn't that be the funniest outcome? Sadie Adler, the blood-soaked gunslinging bounty hunting menace, just casually tending to a mango farm. Dutch would be furious.
We are going to be harvesting mangoes in Tahiti.
But let's be real, the new Sadie wasn't the settling down type. She would never go back and be a ranch wife. She would never be able to sit still. After all, she was always moving forward, always chasing something just out of reach. But here's the crazy part. She actually won in the end. Unlike Arthur, who fought for a future he'd never see, or John, who tried to outrun his past, Sadie didn't just survive. She escape. Not just from the gang or the law, but from the entire story. Sadie isn't remembered like Arthur, Dutch, or John because she never died for the narrative. She didn't go out in a blaze of glory. She didn't get a tragic, poetic send-off, nor did she become a martyr or a lesson for others. She just left. And that's what makes her different in my opinion. Every character in RDR2 is weighed down by their past, by the choices they made, and by the inevitable ending that's coming for them. But Sadie, she refused to be a part of it. She carved her own path, one that Rockstar never truly finished, which is exactly why in the end she became a myth. Because you see, when a character's story never truly ends, when they disappear into the world instead of being buried by it, they stop being just a person. Sadie Adler was the only Van der Linde gang member to actually escape the tragedy. The only one who actually managed to beat the cycle. The only one who lived free. And in a way, that might just make her the most badass character in all of Red Dead Redemption. She wasn't supposed to survive. She wasn't supposed to outlive the Van der Linde gang. Hell, it's a surprise she even made it out alive at the start of the game, and yet she did. In the end, she rode off into the unknown. Not as a widow, not as an outlaw, not as a bounty hunter, just as Sadie Adler. Red Dead Redemption is a tale about fate catching up to people, about no one being able to escape the past, but somehow Sadie did. After all, she was too wild, too unpredictable, and too free for the world to catch her. And maybe that's why we never see her in Red Dead Redemption 1. Sadie doesn't belong to history. She doesn't belong to Dutch's downfall or to John's tragedy. She belongs to whatever legend you want to believe in. Maybe she retired on some ranch in South America. Maybe she went off to hunt bounties until she was old and gray. Or maybe, just maybe, she's still out there, riding across the horizon, gun in hand, chasing the next adventure. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and a big thank you to all the 612 people that ended up subscribing. You folks are the best. If you haven't already, please feel free to hit that like button and of course subscribe for a chance to win an RTX 7090 card once this channel hits 10 million. Stay silly, keep edging, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.